You can always feel when a powerful woman enters a space. Not because she's loud, not because she demands attention, but because her energy speaks long before she does. It's in her posture, in her stillness, in the way she holds her ground without needing to fill the air. She doesn't rush to speak. She doesn't compete to be heard. And yet, her presence sets the tone for everyone else in the room. That's real power. Silent, grounded, and deeply respected. This kind of presence isn't an accident. It's cultivated through inner work. It's the product of a woman who has chosen to master her emotional responses instead of being mastered by them. She doesn't react from insecurity. She responds from awareness. And because her energy isn't scattered, her words carry weight. People listen. Not of obligation, but out of respect. They sense that what she says comes from a place of clarity, not ego. You see, energy is the first language. Before you speak, people have already picked up on your tone. They read your facial expressions, your posture, your breathing. If you walk into a conversation anxious, needy, or defensive, even if your words are polite, your energy communicates otherwise. But if you walk in rooted calm and intentional, your presence begins to shape the emotional climate. That's what it means to set the tone. And powerful women understand this. They don't come in trying to dominate others. That's not power. That's insecurity in disguise. Real power is quiet. Real power creates safety. Real power makes others lower their volume because yours is steady. It's the difference between reacting from emotion and responding from presence. One creates chaos. The other creates direction. This isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through consistent self-discipline. You must learn to regulate your breath before you regulate a room. You must learn to slow down your thoughts before you speak them out loud. A woman who has trained herself to hold emotional space for herself will naturally be able to hold it for others. And people feel that. They feel the difference between someone who needs validation and someone who is the validation. Think of it like this. When a powerful woman speaks, it's not just about her words. It's about the you quality of her presence behind them. There's no rushing. No desperate need to be agreed with. Just clarity. And this kind of communication changes everything. It disarms hostility. It calms anxiety. It commands respect not through force, but through emotional alignment. In the teachings of many martial arts masters, including in Shaolin tradition, the strongest warrior is not the one who strikes first. It's the one who never loses inner balance, even under pressure. That same principle applies in everyday conversations. A powerful woman does not raise her voice to prove a point. She doesn't talk over others. She doesn't explain herself out of insecurity. She doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. Her groundedness sets the rhythm. Her presence sets the emotional frame, and others naturally respond to that rhythm. This is why emotional self-regulation is one of the most essential skills for any woman who wishes to influence, lead, or elevate a relationship. Whether you're speaking to a partner, a friend, or a stranger, your state of being is always shaping the interaction more than your words ever could. If you bring calm, others will either match it or leave because they cannot exist in it. And that's the quiet power you carry when you're emotionally mature. You don't have to fix everyone. You don't have to be louder to be respected. You simply be the tone you want to experience. And in doing so, you subtly invite others to rise to meet you. That's leadership. That's influence. That's the essence of a powerful woman. What makes this even more profound is that it doesn't require perfection. You don't need to be flawless, unemotional, or always composed. You just need to be aware of how your presence affects others, aware of what energy you're bringing into the space, aware of whether your communication is coming from ego or from truth. When you start showing up like that, everything changes. People begin to adjust around your stability. The energy of a room begins to follow your rhythm, and conversations take on a depth and direction they never had before. Not because you forced anything, but because you embodied it. So the next time you enter a conversation, don't focus on what to say to be heard. Focus on how to be, so that your presence is felt before you speak. Master that, and you'll never need to chase respect again. Because a woman who leads with presence doesn't just participate in conversations. She transforms them. You can tell everything about a woman by the boundaries she holds. Not just the words she says, but the energy she allows. The tone of any conversation, whether it's romantic, professional, or casual, is not just set by who talks the most. It's set by who decides what kind of energy is welcome and what isn't. That decision doesn't always come through loud declarations. Often, it comes through silence, through stillness, through quiet, but firm refusal to participate in anything that dishonors her peace. Powerful women don't need to fight for respect in conversations. They command it by the way they move through them. The moment a conversation starts crossing into manipulation, passive aggression, or emotional disrespect, she doesn't argue her way back to dignity. She withdraws her energy. That withdrawal isn't emotional shutdown, it's emotional precision. It's her way of saying, this space no longer reflects my standard, and I won't contribute further. And that alone changes everything. You see, people don't respond to boundaries that are just spoken. They respond to boundaries that are embodied. A woman can say all the right things. I won't tolerate disrespect. I expect to be spoken to kindly. But if she stays in conversations that contradict those statements, her words lose weight. It's not the declaration of boundaries that sets the tone. It's the consistency of behavior. It's walking away when necessary, not with drama, but with discipline. This is why emotional neutrality is so powerful. When a woman stops responding from her wounds and starts responding from her values, she becomes difficult to manipulate. She doesn't get pulled into emotional traps. She doesn't entertain baiting. She doesn't fall into patterns of defending herself over and over. Because when you know who you are, you no longer feel the need to explain it to someone who's not interested in understanding. The boundary isn't just about what you say no to. It's about what you walk away from without warning. Not in cruelty, but in self-respect. You stop explaining. You stop trying to fix the tone. You stop trying to make someone more emotionally available, more self-aware, more respectful. Instead, you notice the pattern. You sense the energy, and you exit the conversation, either momentarily or permanently, depending on what's required. That moment of quiet, decisive self-respect shifts the entire dynamic. Psychologically, what happens here is subtle but profound. When you no longer reward poor behavior with your attention, you break the feedback loop. You disrupt the reward system that fuels toxicity. And that disruption creates either transformation or resistance. But either way, your standard remains untouched, and the person on the other end now has a choice: evolve or exit. It's important to understanding, boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They don't block people out. They reveal who is willing to rise and who is not. And in the act of holding those boundaries, you are teaching others how to treat you without ever raising your voice. You are saying, "This is how I respect myself. If you want to be in this space with me, you will need to align with this frequency." In Shaolin philosophy, discipline is the highest form of self-love. And boundaries are a woman's emotional discipline in motion. They are not acts of punishment. They are acts of alignment. You are aligning your environment with your values. You are aligning your relationships with your peace. You are aligning your conversations with the version of you that you refuse to betray again. And this kind of discipline has ripple effects. When you consistently enforce emotional boundaries, people begin to treat you differently. Not because they fear you, but because they feel the clarity in your presence. They know you don't tolerate confusion, mixed signals, or chaos. They know that your silence speaks louder than arguments ever could, and they start to rise, or they start to fall away. Either outcome is a blessing. It's also important to say this: you don't have to be confrontational to be powerful. Some of the most powerful tone setting happens through quiet exits, through calm redirections, through simple, "I'm not available for this energy right now." No drama, no insult, just presence. And that presence becomes the boundary. So, if you want to change how people speak to you, start with what you allow. If the tone of your conversations feels heavy, manipulative, or draining, pause and ask yourself, what am I participating in that contradicts my peace? And more importantly, what am I afraid to walk away from you? Because the truth is this: the most powerful woman in any room is not the loudest, the most emotional, or even the most articulate. It is the one who can hold her ground without aggression, the one who can say no with silence, the one who can walk away without anger. She doesn't fight for space. She creates it. And that is how she sets the tone. Not just in conversation, but in every room she enters. Punish ourselves. There's something unmistakably powerful about a woman who chooses her words with intention. She doesn't rush to fill silence. She doesn't speak just to be heard. And she certainly doesn't scatter her emotions across every conversation, hoping someone else will gather them for her. She speaks when she is centered. She speaks when her words carry weight. And in doing so, she changes the entire emotional frequency of the interaction. This is what I call emotional precision. It's not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. It's when a woman no longer confuses reaction with connection. She doesn't respond out of habit, insecurity, or fear of being misunderstood. Instead, she pauses. She reflects. She waits for the emotion to settle so that the truth, not the turbulence, can speak. That kind of discipline is rare because most people are taught to speak quickly, to defend, explain, justify. But in truth, the most powerful speech is not reactive, it's reflective. It comes from grounded awareness, not ego. And when a woman lives in that awareness, people feel it. Her words carry a kind of gravity that silences the room, not through force, but through calm certainty. In many Eastern philosophies, including Shaolin teachings, mastery is not about doing more. It's about doing less with greater precision. A single move, done with presence, is more powerful than 100 rushed ones. The same principle applies in communication. A single sentence, delivered with clarity and inner alignment, is more transformative than a flood of anxious words. When a woman speaks from her center, others can feel she is not performing. She is not seeking approval. She is simply expressing what is true for her, and that truth becomes a mirror. It reflects strength, self-awareness, and integrity. Now, emotional precision doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you own how you feel fully. And then you decide how to express it in a way that honors both you and the space you're in. This is emotional maturity. It's the understanding that feelings are sacred, but they don't give you permission to create chaos. A powerful woman knows this. She doesn't use words to wound or dominate. She uses them to guide, to reveal, and when necessary, to protect. This is especially important in relationships. When you speak with emotional discipline, you immediately change the tone of any difficult conversation. You're not coming from a place of blame, but from awareness. You're not trying to control the other person, but to express what is true for you. And the moment you make that shift, you take back control, not over the other person, but over your inner world. And when your inner world is steady, your communication becomes clear. People start to listen differently when you speak from that place. They sense there's nothing manipulative behind your words. No emotional charge pulling them into a performance. Just clarity. And that clarity creates space for real dialogue, for real connection. Even in conflict, your energy remains anchored. You don't escalate. You don't try to win. You simply stay with the truth, calmly, clearly, and with self-respect. You see, so many women have been taught that power in a conversation means being louder, more assertive, more expressive. But true power often comes in the opposite form. It's the calm tone that cuts through chaos. It's the short sentence that ends manipulation. It's the well-timed pause that creates discomfort. Not because you're being silent to punish, but because your silence signals that you are no longer emotionally available for anything that lacks depth or respect. This is how powerful women move. They don't chase emotional closure. They create it. Not through over-talking, but through grounded clarity. They don't repeat themselves, endlessly hoping to be understood. They say it once, with conviction, and they let their consistency do the rest. This isn't coldness. This is emotional economy. It's the wisdom of not wasting energy where it won't be received. And here's the beauty of it: emotional precision frees you. When you're no longer caught in the storm of over-explaining or defending, you gain energy. You gain time. You gain peace. You begin to speak only when it's aligned. And when you do, people listen. Because you're not just saying something, you're saying something that matters. So, if you've been finding yourself drained by conversations that go in circles, if you're tired of explaining your worth, repeating your needs, or being pulled into emotional spirals, try this: to pause. Feel your emotions fully, but speak to ourselves. But speak only once they've passed through the filter of self-respect. Choose your words the way a master chooses his form. Not to impress, but to impact. Because a woman who speaks with emotional precision doesn't raise the volume. She raises the standard up. You can always tell how much a woman values herself by what she allows in her presence. And even more so, by what she chooses not to engage with. You see, silence is not just the absence of words. It's a posture. It's a declaration. And in the hands of a woman who understands her worth, silence becomes one of the most disarming, powerful tools in any interaction. We live in a world that praises quick comebacks and clever arguments. But true influence doesn't always show up in the noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly. It sits in the spaces between what's said and what's not responded to. When a woman decides not to explain herself, not to entertain disrespect, not to match reactive energy with more reactivity. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Silence is not passive. It's strategic. It signals self-possession. It tells the other person, your chaos will not pull me in. Your confusion will not define my clarity. Your disrespect will not find an audience here. There is a deep psychological power in restraint. In the philosophy of the Shaolin Temple, mastery is not proof in how much force you can exert, but in how much force you withhold with awareness. The warrior doesn't strike impulsively. He waits. He reads the energy. He chooses the right moment, or sometimes no moment at all. The same applies in conversation. A powerful woman doesn't use her words to dominate the moment. She uses her silence to transcend it. Now, this kind of silence isn't cold. It's not the silence of resentment or shutdown. It's the silence of grounded presence. It's when you've outgrown the need to constantly prove your point or defend your boundaries. Your life, your energy, your consistency already do that for you. And so, when someone crosses a line, you don't react. You remove your attention. Quietly, firmly. And that removal becomes the loudest message of all. In relationships, especially romantic ones, this can feel unfamiliar to those who rely on emotional reactions to measure connection. But when a woman stops engaging in pointless arguments, when she doesn't flinch at manipulation, when she no longer dances in the drama just to keep the peace, suddenly the whole dynamic shifts. The other person realizes that this is not a woman you pull into dysfunction with noise. She requires presence. She requires truth. And if you can't bring those to the table, she'll take her energy off the table entirely. Silence, in this context, becomes a mirror. It reflects the energy of the other person back at them. It exposes manipulation. It reveals insecurity. It makes avoidance impossible. And in doing so, it invites transformation, if the other person is ready for it. If not, it becomes the gentle ending that honors your peace. You see, setting the tone doesn't always mean leading the dialogue. Sometimes, it means knowing when not to respond at all. It means refusing to argue with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. It means staying still while someone else tries to provoke motion. Because you've learned that not every invitation deserves an RSVP. This kind of power doesn't come from ego. It comes from emotional maturity. It comes from having done the inner work of knowing your own worth so deeply that external chaos doesn't shake your center anymore. You no longer need to win the conversation. You need to honor yourself within it. And this is something people notice immediately. The woman who doesn't get pulled into gossip, who doesn't flinch when challenged, who doesn't over-explain her silence or apologize for her standards. There's a magnetism in that, a quiet strength that speaks for itself. Because when your silence is intentional, it becomes language. And when your presence is steady, your absence becomes loud. So if you've been in situations where your voice felt drowned out, where your value was questioned, or where your emotions were dismissed, try something radically different. Say less. Hold your space. Watch what happens when you no longer rush to clarify, to fix, to rescue the moment. Let the discomfort sit. Let the other person come to terms with your stillness. Because at the end of the day, you are not here to be consumed by anyone's confusion. You are here to embody clarity. And sometimes the clearest thing you can say is nothing at all. Let your silence speak the standard. Let it say, "This is where I rise, and if you cannot meet me here, I will not lower myself to be understood. I will simply step back and let your own behavior answer the questions you're too afraid to ask. A woman like that doesn't need to control the conversation. She is the conversation.